Good morning. Welcome into Pickswise and Pickswise.com. This is Let's Bet It. I'm Mark Zinno. He's Jared Smith for a Wednesday edition of the show. We're brought to you by Superbook Sports. Make sure you guys download that Pickswise app. It's available on the Apple Store and Google Play as well. Subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channel. Give a thumbs up and a like to the content there. Let us know what comments and questions you have. We'll try to get to them all before the end of the show. Coming up on Let's Bet It today, of course, we'll go through the NFL midweek line moves. We have some NFL conference winner odds as well. We'll turn the page to college basketball. Jim Root will join us to discuss that as well, and we'll have our plays of the day. Jared, welcome in. Good morning, and happy Wednesday to you.
Yeah, happy Wednesday. Kind of a weird week, obviously, with all the things lingering in Cincinnati right now. But I've seen some positive reports over the last couple days about DeMar Hamlin. So still not out of the woods yet, but I think trending in a positive direction. Obviously, we are still praying it gets better. I also saw this morning that the Bills are having a walkthrough as they get ready for the Patriots this week. We haven't heard word from the NFL yet about what the schedule is going to kind of conform into. But I think we're at the point now in the process where it's reasonable to think about how things move forward because, you know, obviously we hope DeMar gets better, but we're getting to the point now where week 18, how are we going to handle the schedule? How does that affect how we handicap things? I mean, it's obviously difficult questions, but questions that I think we're getting close to getting some answers to. And it's going to be a very interesting – week 18 is always interesting from a handicapping perspective, but I think this adds another wrinkle that no one can ever prepare for, and we just have to kind of deal with.
Latest from the NFL's Week 18 will go as scheduled. As you mentioned, one of the toughest weeks to handicap in all of the NFL, given how many they call them opt-outs in college. We call them bye weeks, de facto bye weeks that you get in the NFL. Motivation is the only week where motivation really plays a play in the NFL when you talk about what teams really want to do and what really want to accomplish, you know, especially when you're talking about one game changing your draft position from maybe in the top 10 to outside the top 10. So there's a lot on the table there. But let's look at some midweek line moves here for the NFL. As you see the Chiefs and the Raiders, this game scheduled for Saturday. It was opened at -10 in favor of the Chiefs, now down to 7.5. Now, regardless of what we know about the Bengals-Bills game, which at this point in time we know is not going to be replayed this week, I would, and again, this is only speculation on my part. There's nothing to say this, but I think we assume they're probably going to not resume that game, not play that game, and they'll let winning percentage decide the seeding in the AFC. That said, the Chiefs, if they win it, they will have the best winning percentage and will get the number one seed in the AFC. So there's certainly a lot of motivation there for them to win. And if they do play the game, they will need to win regardless because Cincinnati is a game behind them and have the tiebreaker, and the Bills would be tied with them or get a one-game lead on them regardless. So motivation for Cincinnati, for Kansas City rather, 100% there as they have their divisional rival with Jarrett Stidham back under center.
Yeah, I think the NFL kind of lucked out here putting this game on Saturday because if the Chiefs win, you know, they can't rest on what the Bills are going to do or not do on Sunday. So it does kind of create a little bit of added incentive for them to win. And I'll be honest, I was going through the numbers last night, and Stidham was great. Stidham had the fourth highest EPA on an opening drive against the Niners all season, and he had the second highest efficiency rating of the entire week of any quarterback. And what that tells me is he really understood Josh McDaniel's script and his plan, and that makes sense. They spent 2 years together in New England. He comes over as the backup this year to Derek Carr, and it looks like he kind of understands what Josh is trying to do. And I'll be honest, I think the offense ran better than a lot of weeks under Carr. Now, can he repeat that performance for a second week? A little tougher to do, but massive step down in class defensively from San Francisco to Kansas City, who have been exposed a few times this year. And when I look at this meeting, the over's 5-0 in the last 5 games with a average total of 60. And I think that's kind of the direction that I would lean here. 52.5, I know it does seem high, but relatively speaking, these two teams played a 30-29 game a few weeks ago, and the total was 53.5. Still went over by almost a full touchdown. So you're getting a point low. And I know Derek Carr to Stidham, all right, downgraded a little bit. But what I just tell you, Stidham, I think is fine. I don't think that's going to be an issue here. So I think that's kind of the direction I would go here. We did see this total open 49.5 and just get absolutely pegged through that key number of 51. And now, as I said, sitting 52.5. Spread wise, I mean, clearly there's some sharp money early in the market for Vegas. I think over a touchdown, I would say Vegas is probably a live dog here, especially if their offense plays as well as they did last week. Not as bullish on the side, but I think total wise, I'm very willing to put a unit or two on the over.
I won't lay more than a touchdown with the Chiefs this year. They only have 3 wins by more than 11 points. So I'm not ever going to trust them laying more than a touchdown. I've seen Vegas this year make way too much money off the Chiefs as a double-digit favorite. And they're not in this case, but still, I don't feel comfortable doing it. That said, here is the one fear that I have in this game. One, there may be some regression with Jarrett Stidham. You start to feel yourself a little bit. Hey, it's my first ever start, and I got this all under control. Yeah, the NFL is a week-to-week league, kid. You're going to figure that out. That's number one. And two, if you get the Raiders and their bad defense and a negative game script, what the Chiefs can do very easily by getting a lead and forcing them to throw, that's when the Chiefs defense gets really good, or at least plays better. It's when they're in these tight back and forth games with other teams that are competent that the Chiefs end up being not as offensively potent, but they have the ability to take an early lead. That sort of scares me as far as taking the Raiders with the points here, despite the fact that they are home. Not a game I'm really comfortable with, but I don't necessarily disagree with your assessment on the total. All right, Jets and Dolphins. Dolphins open up as -4. Now they're down to -1. Some of this has to do with the fact that we're going to get Skylar Thompson again, unofficially official, I think, at this point, that we're getting Skylar Thompson. We're not getting Teddy Bridgewater, and obviously Tua's not coming back. So that may be part of this whole thing, Jared. But, I just don't like the way Miami is playing on either side of the ball right now, regardless of who is at quarterback.
Yeah, 5 straight losses. They've allowed 23 in all 5, at least 23 in all 5. We saw this game a few weeks ago, played out very one-sided towards the Jets. The line movement here is intriguing. And it's not even the line, frankly, it's not even the line movement. The line movement's really not that intriguing. It's actually pretty, predictable. You go from Teddy to Skylar, it's, maybe a 2-3 point downgrade. That's kind of what we're seeing. But there is a pretty vast discrepancy in the market right now. And I'm seeing Westgate Superbook at -2. I'm seeing multiple other shops at -2. I'm also seeing a Pick'em and a -2.5 and a -1. I know beneath the key number of 3, it's not as impactful. It's not like we're seeing a 3 and a -1. 2.5 still relatively, cheap considering where the -1 consensus is. But the fact that there's a Pick'em, I could right now walk down the street. I can go bet Dolphins Pick'em, Jets +2.5. That's a pretty big, all at -110. That's a pretty big discrepancy in terms of where Vegas tends to be at this time of year with these odds. Usually in week 18, everyone's pretty much on the number. And clearly there's a little bit of vacillation here with how the market feels, either baking in Skylar Thompson or not really sure where Skylar Thompson falls in the grading category. I'll be honest. I think I'm a little higher on the Dolphins than you are. And I think the reason is I'm more lower on the Jets. That Jets performance on Sunday in Seattle was disgusting. They gave up whatever the Seahawks wanted to do. If the Seahawks wanted to run the ball, they ran the ball. If the Seahawks wanted to throw the ball, they got first downs with Geno. If the defense wanted to blitz and get pressure, they were in Mike White's face. If they wanted to drop back and cover, they made Mike White's coverage schemes very difficult. And I think the Dolphins defense, at least from a pass rush standpoint, is significantly better than Seattle. That is not even close. The Dolphins have 3 pass rushers that can get after you. Jalen Phillips has 63 pressures and 9 sacks this year. Wilkins and Ingram combined for 53 and 12. I think this is going to be a really tough day for Mike White, who clearly did not look 100% in their last game. And I don't know how the Jets score a lot of points. If they could only score 6 points against the Seahawks, who can't rush the passer and get pressure, I don't know how they're going to get sustained offense against this Dolphins team. Now, it's very fair to question what Miami's going to do offensively because we don't know what we're going to see from Skylar Thompson, and you can't have Raheem Mostert be your leading receiver, that was the case on Sunday against New England. So we'll see what the Dolphins do offensively, but from a defensive standpoint, with Mike White clearly not being 100%, I don't know how the Jets get sustained offense in this game, and that's why I think the Dolphins at home, playoffs on the line, Jets with nothing to play for, at a pick'em, which is where one of the shops here in town is pricing this game. I think that's a pretty good bet.
All right, on to an NFC North matchup between the Vikings and Bears, which opened up at Vikings -1. Now it's been bet all the way up to Vikings -6 on the road, which almost seems maniacal. But, again, the Vikings still in a seeding position battle here with San Francisco for the 2 seed, which, secretly, as a Giants fan, I'm hoping San Francisco gets that 2 seed. I'd really like to see San Francisco win because the Giants would end up taking on Minnesota in a rematch of the Christmas Day game, which ended within a 61-yard field goal. So if the Giants take on San Francisco, they're going home quite quickly. That said, I'm surprised to see this kind of line movement here. If Justin Fields is in this game, it's like, really, what are we assuming here? The Bears are the best rushing team in the league, and Justin Fields typically has gone bonkers at home this year with running the football.
Yeah, I think it was because we weren't sure about how the Vikings were going to handle their starters. And then Kevin O'Connell came out earlier this week and said he was going to play everybody. And I think that's when the line moved.
Can I give you a pause here, Jared? I mean, look, Todd Bowles came out and said that he is playing all of his starters. And yet the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are still a 4.5-point underdog to the Atlanta Falcons at home. So,
yeah,
maybe
they don't believe
I agree with you. Yeah. they don't believe
just
that.
don't trust it doesn't make sense for the Bucs to place their starters. They could win by 100, lose by 100. They're in fourth place regardless.
Theoretically, he could play them for a series and then yank them out, which is what I think believe is going to happen.
And usually, this, Mark. The smart money kind of sniffs this stuff out pretty quick.
Right.
So I think that's probably the case. That would be my guess.
But anyway, I wanted to bring that up for the viewing audience. Go ahead. I apologize.
That's fair. No, and I'll be honest. I have absolutely nothing to contribute to this Vikings-Bears game. Like, in what universe? I don't. Other than the Justin Fields rushing prop, which we were all over last week for the rushing record. But I don't know how healthy he is. I mean, he had to leave the game last week after that first. I mean, the first half was like an explosion, and then after that, it was kind of. I don't really have much for this game besides Justin Fields breaking the record. That's really all I'm looking at.
You're laying 6 points on the road within the division with Kirk Cousins.
No shot.
Just run in the other direction. Just run in the other direction. Make it easy on yourself.
You couldn't pay me to bet the Vikings in this game. The only considerable angle, and for full, I'll start to disclose some of these now. Like, I won't give you the names, but there are no contract incentives that intrigue me in this game. So that has already pushed me off of it. Like, I have a list of games that have contract incentive props. There are none in this game.
It's not even a contract incentive. It's just one of these things. Does Justin Jefferson want the receiving record? Right? How much will they force him the ball? One too. I mean, again, I don't think there's anything contract related for him. Not that I know of. You would know better than I would. But I just know that this is something that, again, would be personal to him. Right, because especially, again, he's already surpassing a lot of Randy Moss's Vikings records. To own the NFL receiving record for a single season and beat Calvin Johnson would be pretty darn impressive for Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I agree. That's really the only two angles that I have for you in this game. It wasn't even a game that I even looked at from I didn't even do any data research on it because I was like, I want nothing to do with this game. But it's just the Justin Fields and then, as Mark said, the Justin Jefferson records. But you have to do some diligence. You have to see where the numbers are, and you have to see how different the difference between the number and the prop number, because you might get screwed where he only needs 100, but the prop's 105. He gets 100, and then he comes out of the game. So now it might not work out that way, but you have to be. It's not as simple. You're going to hear a lot. You're going to hear a lot of people that work in our space that are just going to give you these contract incentives and say, "Oh, this guy's got a contract incentive." You have to take it the next layer beneath, and you have to see what the number is compared to how much he needs. And find out what that difference is, and it might not be a favorable one for you. For example, he might need 70 yards, but the prop is 80. He gets to 70, he comes out of the game. Oh, I got the record. I'm good. So make sure you look at that before you just blindly bet these this week.
He needs 194 yards.
Justin Jefferson? Yeah, he's not getting
Yes, to 195 to pass the record. So
that would be an insane day.
Yes, it would.
He might get it.
He's not going to. I mean, he's at 17 right now. He is at 1771, and Calvin Johnson was at 1964. So somewhere close to 200 yards. You can actually
just bet the record. I think one of the sports books actually lets you just bet the record over under. If you really want to bet that, that would be how I would handle it and not deal with the prop number. Probably get a better price too.
Yeah, there is that. All right, let's move on to NFL conference odds to win the AFC. They now have the Chiefs at plus 150, the Bills at plus 225, Bengals at 4-1, Chargers 10-1, and the Ravens at 20-1. Why you would even waste your money on the Ravens at this point? Well, I shouldn't say that because if Lamar Jackson's coming back for the playoffs, but nonetheless, does what they decide to do with the Chiefs, with the Bengals-Bills game rather, and the fact that the Bills might not have home field advantage change your view of this?
No, I don't think the Bills not having home field changes anything. I think Buffalo still feels like they can go to Kansas City and win. They've already done it this year. I don't know what to make of this incident. Like, I don't know how I would feel about Buffalo at Cincinnati in the playoffs. That would be a very emotional game based off what we just saw on Monday night. It doesn't change my thoughts about Buffalo winning the AFC because I'll be honest, I was pretty bearish on them to begin with. I just don't think defensively they have the pass rush that they need and the pieces that are healthy enough to win a Super Bowl. I think if you were going to ask me rank the teams right now in terms of how much I think they can win the Super Bowl, I'd put Kansas City and Cincinnati 1A and I'd put Buffalo 1B. I mean, obviously they're right there. But I would put Cincinnati's whole situation, top to bottom, defensively being – I think Cincinnati's got the best defense on the screen right here, maybe the Chargers. But in terms of the contenders on the left side of your screen, I think Cincinnati's got the best defense.
Here's the problem with Cincinnati's defense. Their corners are terrible. And going up against Buffalo and Kansas City, that's a problem. When you look at, what they have accomplished this year as far as – the winning streak that they were on with 7 in a row. Great. Look, they played the Steelers. There's no really wide receivers there. They played the Titans. There's certainly no wide receivers there. They played the. Did they play the Jaguars? I can't remember. But regardless,
they played the Chiefs and the Jaguars. Listen, the Jaguars having a really good year offensively. Yes. They also played the Chiefs. They also played the Bucks.
Browns,
I mean,
Patriots.
Mark, you can't take anything away from what the Bengals have done, bro. They've won 8 straight games.
I'm just telling you what their weakness is. Their weakness is their corners. They
played during that stretch. They played the Chiefs and the Bucks.
Yeah, the Bucks offense isn't very good.
Two best offenses in the league.
Jared, the Bucks offense isn't very good. They went 5 straight games without scoring more than 23 points. I mean, it's not exactly an elite offense.
Bucks offense looked okay on Sunday, bud. Looked okay on Sunday.
That's Sunday
Tom
against
Brady
Carolina.
Had one of the best games of the season.
You're going to sit here and tell me statistically this year that the Bucks have a very good offense?
It doesn't matter statistically. They have Tom Brady, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. I don't care about statistics. I care about covering.
But again, the numbers matter when you're talking about the quality of an offense.
The numbers are okay. They're a top 10 offense, EPA per play. They're a top 10 offense in EPA per play this year. I don't know how we could say that the Bengals haven't played a tough schedule and a tough team.
I didn't say the Bengals didn't play a tough schedule. I said their weakness is their corners, and during the 7-game winning streak, with the exception of the Chiefs, they haven't really played a legitimate wide receiver core. I mean, the Buccaneers have a legitimate wide receiver core. The offense has not scored points.
They picked off Brady 2 times. They held Godwin, Evans, Gage all to under 90 yards receiving. Listen, you're absolutely entitled to your opinion, but to say that the Bengals defense hasn't played well during this stretch and can't cover.
Not what I said.
Is
not what I said. I didn't say they couldn't cover. I didn't say they didn't play well. I said their weakness is their corners. That is the weakness of that defense. And when going in the playoffs, if they have to go on the road against a legitimate offense like Buffalo or Kansas City, that could be a problem for me to make a bet on them to win the AFC.
They just beat Kansas City 4 weeks ago. They held them to 24 points.
Again, on the road, going to Kansas City or going to Buffalo is a different conversation than doing it at home in the regular season. All right, let's move on here. We'll move to the NFC. Eagles at 2-1, tied with the Niners. Cowboys at plus 430. Packers and Vikings both semi-long shots at plus 1250 here. I mean, the Eagles still have to be the favorite, right? Like, the Eagles still have to be the play, I mean, obviously, the Niners defense is going to put them there. But do you really want to lay money on Brock Purdy?
This NFC is a lot tougher to predict, obviously. I like the Packers numbers-wise. Not now. I liked them 2 weeks ago. Full disclosure, I have the Packers at 85-1 and 60-1 to win the Super Bowl in my back pocket right now. I have the Eagles at plus 375 to win the NFC. That bet was made back in late October, late September, early October. I don't think I'd make a bet right now in this market. I think the Packers have the momentum. I think if you asked me of the quarterbacks that are going to be in this field, there's only one that I would be willing to bet on to win a big game, and it's Aaron Rodgers. I don't feel very confident that Jalen Hurts is going to come back and just sight unseen start playing well again. It might take him a game or two, and I don't think Philly has a game or two. Dallas, you can't trust Prescott. He's got the most turnover-worthy plays in the NFL this year, and he just hasn't played well over the last few weeks. I think the Niners would be the second team on the list that I would choose. The biggest issue right now between those two teams is it looks like it's going to be Niners-Packers in the first round. That's not a great matchup for the Packers, but then you do have the Brock Purdy effect. But I'll be honest, Purdy's numbers have been pretty good this year. And I think in the system that he plays in, he's not asked to do too much. And I think there's a good case to be made that he can make a little bit of a run here. But the NFC is a lot tougher to predict than the AFC. I think the AFC is easy. I think there's really only two teams, three, but really two and a half that can win it. Kansas City and Cincy. In the NFC, I don't know. I really don't. I think 3 or 4 teams are possible. Philly, San Francisco, Dallas, and Green Bay, I think, are the 4. Minnesota, obviously, is a complete throwaway.
Yeah, again, we talked a little bit about this on Monday with overreactions and things of that nature. I mean, how much are you worried about Philadelphia after their sort of letdown loss to the Saints? And then as well, look, I'll say this much. I agree with you. Look, the Vikings don't seem like a threat to win the NFC, but that doesn't mean they're a bad team. For somebody who just said a moment ago, all I care about is covering, the Vikings can do that, right? Like, I mean, depending on the situation, the opponent, the Vikings can keep themselves in a game that's close. And if I told you right now it was Vikings-Giants in the first round and Vikings were only laying less than a field goal at 2.5, at less than a field goal.
Well, it wouldn't
be.
It was just 4.
3.5, yeah, 3.5 it was, or 4, depending on what it was. But again,
if it's over 3, I'm taking the Giants in that game. Let's just leave it.
Yes, I agree with you. If the question is for whatever, if it gets bet down to under 3, I mean, that's the point I'm simply making. Like, if depending on the number, it's. I think the Vikings maybe. Let me rephrase this the right way. There is a perception and a narrative about the Vikings that I think generally odds makers ignore perceptions and narratives, right? And the fact that they keep winning and the fact that they're there, certainly, would you agree that it at least puts them in a conversation as far as a cover is concerned in certain spots, especially if they're going to be an underdog beyond the first round?
Maybe, depending on the matchup. I think we got to get the gym. Right.
Okay, let's do that now. Let's switch gears. Go to college basketball with Jim Root, who's going to join us as we get into college hoops here. I know, Jared, you have already pivoted hard to college hoops and have already been doing that very well. But let's welcome in the pro here. And look at that Missouri and that Packers stuff in the background there. Missouri let us down in the bowl game.
You're going to like the Packers analysis I just gave, huh?
I was listening. I was tuned in. I do fear the 49ers, though, as I should, given the history of both franchises.
Yeah. But I told you real quick, Missouri let us down in the bowl game there. I really thought they were going to take that one against Wake. I was a little disappointed by the performance.
Yeah, I've been pretty disappointed, too. I believe that's back-to-back 6 and 7 years with a bowl game loss. And our coach is making like the 9th most money in the entire country. You got to, at some point, start to win some of these big games. It was very frustrating. I assure you the Missouri fan base is as frustrated, maybe not as frustrated because they didn't lose money, but equally frustrated. We'll call it that.
All right. Who's the best team in the country right now in college hoops? UConn, Houston, Purdue, or someone else?
I would go Houston, I think. And Jared, we've been all over Houston since back in April. So I know, hopefully that's the right answer. UConn is right there, though. I think Tennessee and Kansas are also right there. Purdue, for me, has fallen off a little bit. They have now lost 7 straight games against the number, like 0-7. They got kind of inflated by the Portland performance, and they still have freshman guards that are figuring things out. And Edey, while he's incredible, I think teams are starting to game plan him a little bit, be able to scheme him out just a little bit. He's still going to win the Wooden Award, but he's at least kind of ramping down production. Houston just has the best combination of elite defense and actual offensive pop. Tennessee's right there with them in defense, but Houston's got arguably the best scoring guard in the country with Marcus Sasser. They've got a freshman in Jarris Walker who's like kind of blossoming. He had a huge game on the road at Virginia when they picked up probably their best win of the season. And then they offensive rebound like crazy. They're maniacal getting after the glass. So even when they're having cold nights, they kind of have a stable floor of performance because they just get second shots. And I'm not going to knock them too much for their loss to Alabama. Alabama looks fantastic this year. So for me, it's Houston, but it's by a nose. It's not like an emphatic best team in the country.
I think it's hard, and Jim, you can agree or disagree, to really judge who the best teams are now, because they haven't been through their gauntlet of the conference season yet, and we haven't really seen the bigger. We're starting to get the bigger sample sizes, but through the first 5-10 games, we're about 15 games, 20 games in now. It's really hard to figure out who the best teams are because they're all facing different styles of opponents. They're all traveling to these random locations to playing these games. Now we're getting consistent Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday schedules in conference play. We're getting the meat, potatoes, the grind of conference season. And it looks like the SEC, would you agree, is the best conference so far, top to bottom, or is there another that you think might have a little more depth?
It's tricky. It just going to your first point, there's a chance that Gonzaga or Houston are the best teams in the country, and we're not going to see them as tested. And that's always the toughest part about March is we're trying to figure out, like, all right, how much is this for real? How much is it not? The SEC, I think, is probably the only conference with 3 title contenders. Tennessee, Alabama, Arkansas is right there. I don't put Kentucky in that conversation right now. I don't think they belong there. They don't have the wins to really stack up and actually legitimize themselves in that conversation. So they've got the best top end, the SEC, but I think the Big 12 is the best league right now. If you care about Ken Pom numbers, all 10 members are in the top 40. It's kind of insane. There is no single off night in that league. All 10 teams right now are like, we should be an at-large team. And someone's going to go 6-12 in the league and probably not be able to get in. But it's definitely the closest I've ever seen to a league where they could get 90% of their teams in, and it wouldn't be that crazy. Like if everybody goes 8-10, 9-9, 10-8, boom, you got 10 teams or 9 teams in the conference in the tournament, and I think that makes sense. So I guess it depends on how you define best conference. Deepest or most balanced would probably be Big 12, but the best top end is SEC or maybe even Pac-12, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is crazy. Big 12, everybody is at least 5 games over 5 or 4 games over 500 at this point in time. Like overall record, obviously, as conference play just beginning. So to your point, and we knew this was a tough conference here, and it's only gotten better. But from Power Fives to mid majors and Group of 5 teams here, which mid major team, Jim, can make a run come March? Because there always seems to be one of them as of late.
Yeah, I think Oral Roberts will be in the conversation. The darling of 2 years ago. They still have Max Asmus, the big time scorer. He's going to put up 20 every night. They're a little better defensively than they were that time around. Obviously, Kevin O'Banner's playing for Texas Tech instead of Oral Roberts, so that hurts. I think they'll be there, but the 2 most likely candidates are whoever wins Conference USA, because there's 3 teams in that league that are legitimately like at-large caliber, and FAU might actually get an at-large bid. They've been fantastic so far this year, and they've got a big test tomorrow against UAB. And then Kent State out of the MAC, a really, really impressive team. They don't quite have the wins probably to be an at-large team, but they almost won at Houston. They almost won at Gonzaga. We're in both games with like 90 seconds remaining. Super impressive. They're really physical up front. It's kind of been their identity. It differentiates them from their league. But then their point guard's the player of the year in the conference. So it's not like they don't have juice in the backcourt. They don't have a creator. They've kind of got it all. I've been super impressed with Kent State. I think they're minus 145 to win their league now at FanDuel. Might be a little bit of value on that. And then once they get in the league or in the tournament, I think people are going to fear them. Just given what they did at Houston and at Gonzaga, it's like, okay, this team can scale up to power competition pretty clearly. And I think they're going to be able to make a run.
Yeah, I think that those are interesting markets at this stage, the conference outright winners. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's not the conference tournament. It's the regular season for that award, correct?
Yeah, which I love because you get the larger sample size for it to bear out.
Not the one and done. 100%.
Yep.
And make sure that distinction is made when you're making your bet, because I'm assuming there are books out there that allow you to bet on the conference tournament as well, which, once we get to the bracket and we see how things shake out, we might find some value there too. But I think at this stage in early January, if you can find good numbers on regular season titles for Kent State and some other teams that perhaps might be popping in the mid-majors, the sports books do not spend a lot of time regulating and handicapping those markets. They just kind of spit out what the algorithm says. And that's where, if you have some nuance like Jim just provided, you might be able to find a little bit of value there. All right, value tonight on the board. I'm assuming there's at least one under on your card, Mr. Undertaker, or am I wrong about that?
I don't think you'd allow me on the show if I didn't bring an under, right?
No,
that'd be blasphemy. I'll start with my only side, and then we'll get to the unders. I got two of those. But St. Bonaventure is my side tonight. They're at home against George Mason. To me, this is like, I have the better coach in a pick'em game with one of the worst travels in the A10. It's really tough going from DMV area.
Awful.
Getting to Olean is just, it's a challenge. Oh, have you? See, there you go.
When I worked at LaSalle, we traveled there every year, and it was not fun. I hated that place. Like with a passion. March outdoor baseball game. Let's just leave it there.
Oh God. And their fan base loves basketball. So you're going to get a hype home crowd. They just won their A10 opener. I think this kind of shapes up well. The concern with Bonaventure recently has been depth. They just completely wear down. And at the end of the non-conference, I think it kind of happened. But they've played one game in the last 2 weeks, and it was a blowout win by 20. I think they're going to be rested up enough to take down George Mason, who is talented, but does some frustrating things in terms of shot selection and turning the ball over that I think St. Bonaventure will take advantage of. So I'll take them at a pick. And then we're going to the SoCon for two unders. That's where I'm heading. VMI and Samford under 143. I'd take it down to 141. And then Wofford Mercer, I think it's 137 right now. I would take it to 135. The VMI Samford one is more based on personnel. Samford's been missing guys, especially Quez Glover. They're kind of like jet lightning point guard that gets up and down and kind of dictates their pinball pace. They've been a lot slower without him. I think against VMI, who's shown tendencies to be a pace taker and will play slow if Samford wants to, I think we get a bit of a grinder there. And then Wofford Mercer, two teams that love the half court. They're going to play in the half court. The only concern is if we get some efficiency, but I think we'll see a little bit of shooting regression, particularly on the Mercer offense, Wofford defense side, that should help us out. So we get a slow game. As long as the teams don't go nuts from three, I think that's a good value under as well.
Nice.
Never a bad look for the unders. Jim Root, make sure you guys give him a follow on Twitter and get all the great stuff at Second Chance Points. That's second is in 2ND, Second Chance Points. And those college basketball content for the three-man weave. We appreciate the time as always there, Jim. Great to talk to you again, and look forward to doing it again real soon.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I need to get better lighting, or I need to get outside because, man, I look like a ghost compared to you two. Holy cow!
Oh, join the club, bud. Yeah. Now that it's not sunny anymore in Vegas, I've been like a vampire the last month.
Yeah, you've got 7 a.m. shows now, man. We kind of flipped here with the time zones.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
early.
I know. Don't remind me. Up at 6 every morning with the dog.
It's a grind.
Yeah, good to talk to you, bud. We appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Again, Jim Root at Second Chance Points. Want to remind you guys before we get to our plays of the day that Let's Bet It is presented by Superbook Sports. Pile up the wins and pile up the money with Superbook. Right now, the best betting app from Las Vegas is giving you free money every week that you make a bet. Just place a $50 bet each week with Superbook, and they'll give you a $5 bonus up to $50 for betting each week afterwards if you're in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Nevada, New Jersey, or Tennessee. Download the Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com to get your streak started today. Since we are finishing up the conversation on college basketball. Jared, I know you're going to college hoops for your play of the day, sir, so we'll get us going.
Yeah, I'll mention very briefly, there is a college basketball bet. It's actually, we should have asked Jim about this. Missouri, Arkansas tonight. Chad Harstock likes Mizzou, one of our college basketball handicappers on the site. 3-star play plus 7.5. And in Christopher Moraes, if it wasn't for Jim's fantastic analysis, I probably would have given out this bet for the play of the day. But Christopher Moraes is doing an alt puck line in the NHL tonight on the Dallas Stars to beat the Ducks by 2.5, 3 goals plus. And that price is plus 230. So Christopher Moraes taking a swing for the fences tonight in the NHL, and then Chad Harstock's got a college basketball underdog there with Mizzou and Arkansas. So those are your 2 3-star plays. Listen, if you want to scroll back 5 minutes and listen to everything Jim said about the Bonnies tonight, I wholeheartedly support that pick. That is a very difficult place to play. George Mason is a relatively new team in the Atlantic 10. They have not traveled to Olean, New York. That place will suck out your soul, especially this time of year in early January. I don't know what the weather is tonight. But I know it's an indoor game, but someone coming from George Mason in Northern Virginia, where it's a little bit nicer climate, you drive up to New York and you go through these little back roads, and then you get to Olean, and it's just white and it's just bleak. So I don't have a whole lot. I haven't watched Bonnie's. They're a much different team this year. Basically had their entire roster gutted with transfers. They had a really good run with their prior iteration, and Schmidt, the coach, has been there a long time. He's done a really nice job. But if you really want the handicap on the Bonnie, scroll back about 5 minutes, and Jim will give it to you. But I fully support his play tonight. It's basically a pick 'em. I saw a couple shops out there dealing one, but you can find a pick 'em if you want. So Bonnie's tonight at home against Mason. Get into the college basketball rhythm. I was talking to our pal Tim Murray last night, and I said, now that college football is done, the 1 hour to 2 hours every day that I spend handicapping college football will now be allocated towards college basketball. And that's it. You just kind of, transition into what we're going to see, which is every single day, every night, there will be games. Very exciting time for college hoops over the next couple months as we gear up for March Madness.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to be very, very good. All right, I'm going to go to the NBA for my play of the day. Out West, as the Hawks are taking on the Sacramento Kings here. And Jared, a monster, and I mean monster total of 245.5 here. Wow. I'm going to play the under. Part of this here is that Sacramento is on the back end of a back-to-back. They just played last night in a game that they had won. But, Atlanta lost in double overtime on Monday to Golden State. So probably some tired legs for both of these teams going into this game. Now, Atlanta's still the best over team in the league, but Sacramento, one of the best under teams in the league, or third best, as a matter of fact, despite the fact that they are such a good scoring team and the fact that their defense is really, really bad here. The Hawks' three-point shooting starting to come around, but not enough for me to take the over here. You're going to need so many things to go right on both ends of the floor. But mostly, Jared, this is about Sacramento not being able to put forth an effort where they're going to get to 120 in this game. Even if the Hawks put up 130, you'd still need a 115 coming out of Sacramento to be able to push this total over. This is just too big of a number here. These two teams played earlier in the year in a game that was won by Atlanta in Atlanta. Final was 115-106. I don't see much different about these two teams. And the total going into that game, Jared, 241. So we're right in that same range here. Give me the under tonight with the Sacramento Kings on the tail end of a back-to-back. Hawks coming off a double overtime game. Some tired legs, a little less scoring than expected. Under 245.5 tonight in Sacramento. All right, that'll do it for us today here on Pickswise, and let's bet it again. Make sure you guys subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channel. Give a thumbs up and a like to the content there. Download the Pickswise app, available on the Apple Store and Google Play as well. Make sure you follow Jared on Twitter at Jared Lee Smith. I'm at Mark Zinno. Let's Bet is presented by Superbook Sports. Back with you guys tomorrow for another edition. Have a great Wednesday. Go get it. Go bet it. We'll talk to you tomorrow.